I'm Evelyn.
And I'm Robert.
And we're talking about it.
So I hope everyone's doing well.
Yes, for sure.
And it's getting crazy this summer.
It is. Just with weather alone.
Is really weird.
Yeah, we had oh my gosh, at work, like all of us went outside and just stopped what we were doing because it was a blood red sky with a rainbow, and all my coworkers, and I included, were taking pictures of it, but everyone's like, "Oh, it's so pretty." I'm like, "It's about to start raining blood and it's the zombie apocalypse." So, I've seen enough movies where I was terrified. I'm like, should we be outside?
And if anyone was a sailor, they would definitely know that they should take it as a warning. So, yeah.
Okay.
So, last chapter, you came up with some predictions for this chapter. And this new chapter, by the way, it's called Muster of Rohan.
I did, and I actually wrote them down this time.
Shocked, I tell you.
So I actually remember them. Okay, so my prediction was that they were going to march to meet another army, and that army would be Gondor. And then I also predicted Eowyn would have more, like, book time.
Okay. What was the third one?
That was the third one.
I only heard two.
No, the march to meet another army, and then the second prediction is that army will be Rohan. I mean, Gondor, sorry. That the other army would be Gondor that they're meeting up with.
I see that as one prediction, but okay.
Okay. You said last time I could get away with both, so.
All right. Well, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Because I don't remember what I told you this morning before we went to breakfast. So
that's true.
All right. So, how'd those predictions come out?
I think I got 2 out of 3. We'll discuss it.
Okay.
I think I got a 2 out of 3.
Right.
I would argue for one of them being right, and the other one is definitely right.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So, let's just plunge right into this then.
Sounds good.
Speaking of plunging right into it, it plunges straight into the story with the gloom of the soft sighing trees.
Yes.
I thought that was that's very interesting. I love the way he puts words together.
Yes.
And this is giving a completely different type of take on things that go on.
Yes, it's mostly from Mary's point of view, which is really interesting. And then something that I thought was really fun is, so as you guys have been listening, we're doing a series of Beowulf bonus episodes. And something that I noticed in this chapter specifically, the writing is kind of similar in, like, the saga-ness-esque of it all.
Say that again?
Saga-ness-esque is the best word I can come up with.
Saga-like.
Saga-like, okay.
No, saga-like, not saga-like.
You know what I mean.
No, I don't.
You know what I mean. I said this earlier today. Everyone needs to learn Evelynese because I think my words that I come up with make sense.
Okay. But like you said, so it's mostly from the viewpoint of Mary.
Yes.
And I really like how we're seeing Mary mature. Mary's worried about the others.
Mm-hmm.
He's wondering what's going to happen with him and with who he's with currently.
And when we get to that part of the chapter, I wanted to do a deep dive into that.
Okay.
It's my turn to do a deep dive.
Well, I've got a rabbit hole to go down to.
All right. So it starts off, they're marching. They're marching somewhere. And while they're marching, Mary is telling the king all about the Shire.
Right.
Still. He's still with the king and contributing in his own way.
Yes. So some of my deep dive was looking at the sources of the names of some of these places.
Uh-huh.
So the first place, so the stream or creek or lake or river or whatever you want to call it, it's called Snowborn.
Mm-hmm.
I I think that's a great name.
Okay.
The Snowborn. Tolkien states that it's a modernization form of the actual old Rohan language. So here we're starting to see how Tolkien has basically taken Old English and making it Old Rohan, and then taking modern English and making it today's Rohan language.
Yes.
Which is interesting, and I'll explain why I think he's doing that.
Well, it's also going to be interesting because we have another Beowulf episode coming out. Actually, I think before this, where we're actually going to be talking about that a little bit as well.
Yes, but also it's interesting because Snowborn doesn't really mean what we might think it means right away.
I imagine it's born of the snow in the mountains coming down.
Kind of, but it's also born, which in Scottish pronounced burn, is really a stream or a brook.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but and it's snowy because it's foamy.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of rocks in it, so it's always a
Gotcha.
little foamy.
Okay.
And it's heading towards the Entwash.
Oh, okay.
So
Cool.
And where is it coming from? It's coming from Starkhorn. It's a horn-peaked mountain, and the Starkhorn actually means like a great spike. So it looks like a great spike standing up.
Okay. Cool.
Instead of what we would normally think of as a mountain,
It's a little sharper.
it's sharper
And more steep.
And more steep and a little bit more narrow.
Okay. And then as they arrive to their destination, they arrive where they suddenly declare the king of the Mark has returned. And that is a direct Beowulf inspiration right there.
Okay, yeah, because you know Mark. So the Snowborn is the border between the East Mark and the West Mark, and a mark is military districts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's something that's used in the Beowulf story.
And it's interesting because as I was reading this, I'm still a little tired from my 7-hour drive yesterday. So my mind went everywhere. I had a lot of rabbit holes.
Okay.
So there's a sentence that says, away to the right at the head of the great dale, the mighty Starkhorn loomed up above its vast buttress swathed in clouds. Now, the first time I read that, and even the second time I read that word buttress as butterness. So I'm trying to understand what Tolkien is meaning about calling something butterness. And I spent 5 minutes trying to find a reference to it in his nomenclature or in his unfinished tales or something. And then I went, maybe I'm misunderstanding this. I went back and read it again. I went, oh, yeah, I was misunderstanding this. But because we're talking about hobbits,
it could.
I still don't think it's weird that I thought it was butterness.
Yeah, because it was Mary kind of describing it.
Because even also recently, Mom, your mom, when we were out doing a drive, we saw a old 57 Chevy, and it was this real neat color of yellow.
Okay.
And Mom called it buttery. So, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm reaching for straws to try to make up for my mind wandering there.
So are you calling Mom a hobbit?
We're all hobbits.
We are all hobbits. Our family is our hobbits. Alrighty. As they arrive, the men of the Mark relay to Theoden that they saw the winged shadow.
The winged the winged shuttle.
Oh, I read it as winged, but it is winged, isn't
Butterus.
it? We both. I would like to say when I first read the word naked in a book, I thought it was Nate, and the book was Harry Potter, and I thought it was some weird British slang term that I didn't know. So this is on par for me.
Unfortunately. And I like the little thing that he puts in there about the men behind Theoden and Mary, kind of giggle at themselves seeing Mary on his shaggy gray pony and Theodore.
Theoden.
Wow. Maybe I should go back to bed. Theoden on his great white horse.
Yes.
Okay, so here comes the rabbit hole.
Okay.
All right. Great white horse. I mean, there's this tradition of generals and kings riding white horses, mostly so the men can identify who it is.
Okay.
But then there's also a opposite in some cultures that the king rides a dark horse so the enemy can't tell who the king is.
Oh.
So, but I went down the rabbit hole with the white horse.
Okay.
And one reason why I went down this is because we do live in the D.C. area, and I have done a few funerals out at Arlington National Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And Arlington National Cemetery has their own cavalry still.
Okay.
And within that cavalry, they have what is called the White Squadron as part of the old guard. And the white horses draw the caisson, which is usually the wagon that has all the supplies in it for the cannon.
Okay.
But in place of a cart for the casket, the casket is in the caisson.
Okay.
And so, depending on the person's rank, or maybe not even necessarily his rank, but being a hero or so forth, they'll give him the white squad instead of the black squad. And so so that's where I went.
Okay.
Because it's a tradition that goes way, way back.
Okay.
It goes back to Europe even, which now getting to why
Tolkien would know it.
Tolkien would probably connect white horses.
Yeah.
With the kings and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just thought that was interesting in my head.
Okay.
I hope you followed it.
I followed.
And
I thought it was interesting.
And that everybody else didn't fast forward it.
So as they're walking, they see, so they're talking about how it's like no one really knows how this area was even built, what it was built for. All these legends and myths are lost, which I felt was very significant because Tolkien is all about the myths and legends. Right. And I think that's something that he's pulling out, where that's something that we don't know in our own history, especially English history, where they have all of these places like Stonehenge, the most famous one, where they just don't know what it was for, why it was built, who built it, how it was built. And it's stuff that like spikes the imagination.
Yeah, and Mary is looking at these, lines of puckamen, which are basically pine men.
Oh, I was gonna ask, what is puckamen?
Puckamen, that's pikemen.
Okay.
So like people who are marching with pikes.
Okay.
And he starts thinking about, he's starting to think about what everyone else is doing. And it kind of connects to his loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
He's lonely for his friends.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's seeing things that are very unfamiliar to him. And it doesn't say he asked what they are,
Mm-hmm.
but because Tolkien kind of tells us that, they've been around for so flippin' long, nobody's really sure.
Right.
And so that might have been because he asked.
Yeah.
We don't hear that directly.
Yeah. And then we see Eowyn.
Like, Eowyn is waiting with the others on the Don Harrow,
Yes.
which is a refuge or sacred place. It's basic. So there is a
It's where Aragorn went to in the last chapter.
right, but there is a watercolor painting.
Oh.
There is a watercolor painting that Tolkien did of what this looks like,
Okay.
and it's like a plateau.
Okay, we'll have to find that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, it's like a plateau, and like you said, Eowyn is here. Mary hears the sadness in her voice.
Yeah.
Because Aragorn's been there.
And he left.
And he left to go to the paths of the dead.
Which he starts to ask about. But before we get to that,
okie dokie.
This is where Mary is really starting to feel left out. Mary is, like, they start to talk about the paths of the dead, and and he's starting to feel left out. It's just like, oh, Sam and Frodo are off to Mordor. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are off to the Pass of the Dead. Pippin and Gandalf are off in Gondor. And where am I? And this is what I wanted to talk about a little bit about Mary, where I think a lot of people, especially millennials, will really, like, get with is, like, I totally feel like where he's coming from, because a lot of times, especially in my own life, I feel like, oh, my friends, they're off getting married and having careers, and I'm stuck. I feel like I'm stuck because of, like, my medical problems and everything. And it's something that I feel like a lot of people can relate to right now in the world that we live in, where we're all just kind of feeling stuck. Like, everyone else is off doing things, or at least we perceive that. And it's like, okay, I'm stuck here, not really able to do anything. What can I do, like, to be productive, a productive member of society, someone worth something, doing something. And it's just, I really identified with Mary here, and I think a lot of people can, right here, where he's just like, well, he starts, like, chanting to himself. It's like, I will not be left behind. I will not be left behind. I will not be left behind. And later in the chapter, we'll see he goes to, like, a couple extraordinary lengths to not be left behind.
Right. And also something that's happening is he's also hearing Theoden and Eowyn hoping that Aragorn
Will be okay.
will survive going to the paths of the dead.
Yeah, Theoden starts telling a story about it, and Mary was like, well, we don't swear on this podcast, but you know what I'm thinking. But he's very worried for his friends.
Right.
And I want to point out, I love that he still calls him Strider. To him, he is Strider, where he's like, Strider, I mean, Lord Aragorn. And
yeah.
It's just like, to him, like, Aragorn is still, like, Strider, this ranger, this nice, down-to-earth kind of guy, where everyone else is like, no, Aragorn's, like, super important and a king, dude. And he's like, he's still my homie.
Well, I don't think he thinks of him as Strider because he's this nice guy. I think he still thinks of Strider as Strider because Strider was mysterious. You don't know who he is or what he's doing. And so here's another thing of, why in the heck is he doing this?
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense. Oh, well, that's Strider for you.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And because we talk a little bit about I mean, because Tolkien writes a little bit about some stuff here. I did a little digging too. So, part of him going there is because it's been hinted because Paths of the Dead are full of the souls who were supposed to fight in an earlier war with one of his ancestors.
Yes, we talked about this last time.
And so I was wondering, okay, so what kind of connection is this? And so I did just a real quick 5 minute going back over Aragon's genealogy,
Mm-hmm.
and his ancestry goes back um, to Eredil, the mariner, the half elf.
Okay.
That's Elrond's father. No, grandfather.
Okay.
Elrond's grandfather.
Okay.
So that line of men,
Mm-hmm.
I did my quotes, air quotes, men, are
Men with a little bit of Elvis.
well, yeah, they're related. That they find their ancestry going back to the half elf,
Mm-hmm.
and since he's in direct line, there's still some of that, lack of a better word, magic,
Mm-hmm.
in his blood,
Okay.
which we'll see later on how that might connect.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
And
cool,
that
cool.
and then Theoden also mentions that, well, those paths are supposed to stay closed until the time comes. So maybe the time hasn't come and it will stay closed, or if it opens, it means he's supposed to be there.
Right.
So either way, the outcome should be okay.
Right.
Doesn't really say, I mean, because it's not a good outcome. If you think about it. He's going there to hopefully get some power
Mm-hmm.
for this war coming up.
Yeah.
So either he's going to get it or he's not.
Yeah.
And if he gets it, it's still this unknown because it's so
Mm-hmm.
the ideas about it are so old. They're not certain if that's truly the case.
Okay.
So,
All right.
and then we hear a man is here. No crap. There's all kinds of men here. But anyway, a man is here. And as this person approaches, for a moment, Mary thinks it's Boromir.
I know. For like a split
Me
second,
too.
he hopes he is.
Well, oh no, that's not what I thought you were going to say.
Oh.
I thought it was going to be his brother.
Oh. I thought it was gonna. Yeah, I did think it was gonna be his brother.
But then it's just that those fighting men just all have the same kind of
Look about
stature and build about
yeah.
them. But it's like Boromir's alive. Oh,
Darn it. Yeah.
wishful thinking.
Yeah.
But he has brought the boom 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 red arrow.
Which I am not familiar with Red Arrow when it comes to symbolism and mythology and legend. So I was hoping you could enlighten me.
So a red arrow usually means it's
And I didn't want to look into it because I didn't want like spoilers of anything.
yeah, a red arrow could mean, your son was slain and here's the arrow that did it.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's got the red tip.
Yeah.
But here the red arrow is this ancient connection between these two people.
Okay.
And so that red arrow is being delivered. It's basically proof that Theoden is being called by Gondor to come help.
Okay.
And this is
Like the official call for it.
This is the official call, and there's so much history behind this. I mean, we don't really hear it, or read about it much,
Mm-hmm.
but he knows that if he says no, there's just all kinds of bad juju going to happen if he says no.
Okay.
And even by saying yes and going, he knows things are going to happen, or things are going to be kept from happening.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows that he needs to
say yes.
Yeah, he needs to answer this call.
Right.
And
so they're about to go off to battle, and he says he releases Mary from his service, and he wants him to stay with
there's
Evelyn.
a no.
Yeah, Mary is like,
and all his fears come to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like panic attack kind of style.
Right.
Where, like, they don't really say it, but it's like, I read it as he has kind of like a panic attack, where he has the similar reaction to Eowyn, where it's like, I want to go into battle and to not only prove my worth, but protect the people that I've come to care about. Like, it's a mixture of both. And yet, they're being kept from it because the people who care about them want them to stay safe.
Right. So, and one of the things that really digs into Mary's heart is, this coin that comes in his head.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's probably taking something of old, but it's also making it real for the moment, too. Because it talks about Theodore riding 5 nights and 5 days east and onward. And so it's an interesting, so far in our book, it's interesting because it's not an old poem or myth, or it's not something that Bilbo wrote, or something like that. This is something that's, the beginnings of it is coming into his heart.
Yeah.
And Eowyn's like, Mary, you can stay with me.
Yeah.
And then, and Aragorn told Mary that Aragorn told Eowyn to make sure Mary is ready for battle.
Yes.
So she's been able to find some armor,
some weapons, some armor, like not necessarily like the best stuff, right, but something that he can utilize.
Yes. And then it's like it's coming from someone who sees sees death as ahead for many people too. Mm-hmm. He wants, and Strider wants his friend to be protected and ready as best he can.
Yeah.
And then we have a little bit of, like what I always consider of, like a mage, magic tricks, modern magic tricks. It's an illusion. It's misdirection, and da, da, da. So we get a little bit of misdirection there. Then suddenly a rider, an unknown rider, invites Mary to go with them. And Mary says, well, I don't know your name. Mary says, I don't know your name. And this rider says, call me Dinhelm, which means secret under the helm.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. And they're much lighter and leaf than the other warriors, which, can I just say, this has to be Eowyn, right? Can I make that a long-term prediction?
No, it's not a long-term prediction. You're right. I'm going to tell you right now.
Right. Spoilers.
Spoiler alert!
Thanks. I wanted to be excited to be right.
Well, you've seen the... I mean, never mind.
I have not seen the third movie. That's part of the point. I haven't seen the movie. You just spoiled it.
Sorry. See, to me, it's just so...
That's the point of this. I haven't seen this or read
I know. I'm sorry. It's just, to me, it's just so obvious.
It is so obvious. It is very
it's
so
so
obvious. Like, I thought that even before you told me who, like, what the name meant, but it's like, still, dude. And so they sneak off into battle.
Sneak off into battle.
And they're headed to meet another army. So that's why I argue, I got Ewan right, and that's why I would argue they are marching off to meet another army.
Yes.
Do I get points because we do know they're marching off to Gondor?
Well, wait a minute. Though you were talking about, these were the predictions for this chapter.
Yeah, to meet another army, and that army is going to be Gondor. So they are still going off to meet. I didn't say they would meet them. I said that that's what they're doing.
So I'm going to give you I'm going to give you 2 out of 3 because they did meet another army, even though it's the other part
of their army.
Theoden's army.
Right.
And that they did hear from Gondor.
So I'll get a half point for Gondor because they're on their way to meet Gondor.
Right. So yeah, I'll give you 2 out of 3.
Okay.
60,
2.5 out of 3.
60.
2.5 out of 3.
No.
2.5. I get a half point for the Gondor. Remember?
No.
2.5 out of 3. I get 2.5 out of 3.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
No.
Yep. I decided. I'm the editor. I'll keep it in.
You're a cheater.
I am correct.
Cheater, cheater, pumpkin eater. Liar, liar, pants on fire.
All right.
So.
Well, do we have anything else for that chapter?
That's basically where it ends. But I just want to read the last part of this thing that Mary's got going in his head.
Okay.
So, 4th rode Theoden. 5 nights and days, east and onward rode the, I'm not going to pronounce that word right, Urgas, through Fold and Finmarch and Fernwood. 6,000 spears to Sunlending, Moberg the Mighty, Sea King's city in the South Kingdom. Foe beleaguer, fire encircled, doom drove them on, darkness took them, horse and horseman. Hoofbeats after sank into silence, so the song tells us. So he's really
laying it on thick.
Yeah, Token's laying it on thick, and Mary is just, heavy at heart.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that's it for this chapter.
Yeah.
There's a lot in this chapter to get you ready
for what's coming up.
So it's not one to quickly read through.
Mm-hmm.
Because so I spoiled this, but there's a lot here.
That's going to set up.
That is just the beginning of unpacking later stuff.
Okay.
Right. So, did you have anything else?
No, that's all I had for this chapter.
Okay, so our next chapter is Siege of Gondor.
Okay, so I predict that Gondor is going to be under siege.
No. Don't count. Does not count.
Can I predict Rohan's going to get there just in the nick of time?
You can predict
it's obvious, but it's still... It's a prediction. It's not as obvious as the Siege of Gondor, but... Alright, I'm gonna predict that Faramir shows up in this chapter.
Okie dokie.
And I'm gonna predict Merry and Pippin get reunited at the end. Or at least in this chapter.
The next chapter. Siege of Gondor. Okay.
I'm gonna predict that Merry and Pippin... Actually, no, I think they're gonna get after the battle. That next chapter. I'm gonna say they're gonna get reunited next chapter.
Okay. That's 2.
No, that was 3. Was that 2?
It was 2.
No, I said... What did I just say? Rohan's gonna get there in the nick of time. Faramir's gonna show up, and Merry and Pippin are gonna be reunited. Yeah, that's 3.
Okay. Alright. So, that's it?
I think that's it.
Right. Well, I've been Robert.
And I've been Evelyn.
And you've been listening to Token About It.